It's time for Coffee and Company, fueled by Thornton's on Sports Talk 790.
Holy crap, I don't know who the hell we think we are.
Get off our show, idiots! The kids are playing their tail off, and the coaches are screwing it up.
Go play intramurals, brother. Go play intramurals.
They're supposed to be mature adults, but they're really not. Who's the kid here? Who's the kid here? Are you kidding me?
Now here's Nick Coffey.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome in. Coffee and Company. That's us, fueled by Thornton's here on Sports Talk 790. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on another freezing cold afternoon. But hopefully this show for the next 3 hours can be a distraction. I don't think it'll make you feel any warmer, but nonetheless, we are here until 6 o'clock. So stick around, hang out, make yourself at home. We are not hard to find, by the way. You can listen live on the iHeartRadio app, listen live at 790louisville.com. And if you want to watch, if you want to, you can. You can watch live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Still getting used to it, but it's now been over a week. So, so far, so good. At least I think so. It's not been, we haven't had any complete, screw up. So again, there's a lot of ways for you guys to listen in and a lot of ways for you to contribute to the show. And I will certainly tell you how you can do all of that coming up here in just a moment. So we are loaded today, but before we really get the party started, I need to once again use the platform here to defend myself just in case. And this is my insecurities as a human. I'm insecure. I do care what people think of me. There's a level to it, right? Like I realize there are certain people that think certain things of me that I know is not true, and I know they don't know me. But today something happened that would, in fact, lead people to think I'm a scumbag. And maybe not a scumbag, but just a thief. And I want to defend myself. So we've got NTI going on at the house with, my daughter. And we have NTI tomorrow, too. Which are the roads okay? John, you drove in today.
The roads are fine. I feel like most of the reason for the NTI stuff at this point is because they think it's too cold for kids to wait at the bus stop.
And that makes sense. Like, I get that. I'm not against that. I'm not somebody that's like, I'll be damned if they let these kids not go to school because it's cold outside. And I've talked about this before. There are people that have no kids, do not work in the school system. School being open or closed does not impact them at all, but they get angry. They get angry when, in fact, kids don't have to go to school because the weather wasn't as bad as maybe it was back in the day when they had to walk in 6 feet of snow to get there. But anyways, I feel bad asking you about the weather and the roads because, you drive in every day and
you get to stay home now.
I'm in my house and I mean this, and you know this is true, but others probably wouldn't believe it. If we didn't have the live stream component and the build out here that I have here, I wouldn't do the show from home as much as I do. In fact, I was going to come in today, but the day got away from me. So I do now know we can do it both places, whether it be me here, me at the studio. In fact, with the power of technology, it won't look as good, but we can do it anywhere, honestly. As long as I have a connection. So I'll stop asking you about the weather, the roads, because you're the one out there,
Hey, and there's more snow coming. I don't know if you're aware, but
that's true.
Don't be surprised if it's NTI the rest of the week.
Okay, so I saw that, but I never know what to believe when it comes to the weather stuff. I have no clue. So anyways, back to my story. We have NTI, and my son has been sick, man. The poor guy has been dealing. He's okay, but he had strep throat. I think it was a little bit after Thanksgiving, and then sure enough, he had it again in the last week or so, and he's getting better. He's okay, but it's been kicking his rear end, and I hate it for him. Which, by the way, I'm not a doctor, but I'll act like one here for just a second. They tested him for strep. And am I crazy to think like it would be impossible for you to have strep that quickly, back to back? Like, wouldn't your immune system just kind of not allow that to happen? John, you're the medical professional. You went to medical school. Like, I feel like it's very rare that he would, in that amount of time, could get the same type of virus, which is strep throat, if it's even a virus. I really don't know. I just think it's odd to either it's probably a test that's still showing what he had before. And
I could be wrong, but for some reason I feel like strep is a bacterial infection. But again,
you're probably
what do
right.
I know? I don't even know if that makes a difference.
They could have a vaccine for strep, and I wouldn't know. I know nothing. Although I did get strep as an adult last year, and it kicked my ass. You know more about that than I will ever let people know on the show, because it's gross, and it's not anybody. Nobody would want to know. But anyways, so long story short, my wife's been at home a lot this week. Well, so far, I mean, she's at work right now, but I mean, we've been having to kind of adjust our schedules because of snow, which most parents do. It's not like I'm asking for credit or I'm acting as if I've had some real hardship as a parent, because it's life. But I was at there's the grocery store here that is near our home, and it's right next to the gym. So I was going to the gym, and my wife needed me to get something. So it turns into where, okay, I walk in after leaving the gym, and I'm getting one item for her to, make dinner. And then it turns into, well, while he's there, let's see what else we need. So sure enough, like, I call her, hey, you need anything else? And it's not like she's all over me about, get a cart and go grocery shopping. But like, I know while I'm out, I might as well ask her what else we need, because we don't know when we're going to be out again. And I'm already here, right? Nobody wants to leave if they don't have to. I feel like in this kind of weather and this cold. But so I don't get a cart, because I walk in getting one thing. And it was a pizza Lunchable, John. And it was for my daughter for school, which she can still eat it, but like, she's not taking it to school. So sure enough, by the time I'm exiting, I'm not exiting the store, but I'm now walking to the self-checkout. So I end up getting like 5 other things, and it's not like I got a ton of stuff, but I don't have a cart. So I'm holding things awkwardly, and I ended up going to get 4 Monster energy drinks, because they're on sale there, and they're actually cheaper there than anywhere, but I'm not going to tell you where, because they don't pay us. But anyways, I get 4 of them, and those things, even if I had nothing in my hands, would be hard, would be not hard to hold, but you know what I'm saying? So what do? I just start shoving them in my hoodie pocket and in my jacket pocket. And I got like a jacket, pocket like inside the jacket, you know what I mean? So I'm doing that. Just not thinking. I'm just like, and I've got my AirPods in, I'm listening to music. Like, I'm just kind of in my own world, and I am, just getting whatever I need. And I'm going to the self-checkout to get everything out. And I sit it on, I think they have like a little, it's a little mini fridge where you can buy a drink when you leave, but it also, it's actually works perfect, because you can sit the stuff there while you do the self-checkout. So again, headphones are on, I'm in my own world. I'm, checking out. And sure enough, as I'm walking out, I'm stopped. And as soon as I realized they were stopping me, I knew what had happened. And I'm sure you can guess what happened too. Somebody saw someone stuffing something in their pockets at the store. And if that's not the biggest red flag of a shoplifter, I don't know what is.
It is.
So I wasn't offended. I realized, what was going on. I'm like, am I going to have to just, they're not going to strip search me, but like, I get what this looks like, but I can tell you what had happened, how it happened. And it was, it was a brief thing. They didn't think that they were told to stop me. I explained it. It was fine. But while I'm sitting there explaining it to them, and they are pointing out, what somebody had told them, and it was another employee that had mentioned it. So there are like 4 or 5 people leaving the store and, entering the store at the same time, right there by the door. And it's quite clear they think they've got a shoplifting suspect. And I'm like, oh my God, people think I'm stealing from a grocery store. But usually, I'd say folks who didn't steal that get accused, they're not going to get hostile, try to fight you. Some people will, but I think they'd be offended, right? They'd be inconvenienced. They'd be bothered. In fact, it happened to me. Remember when I got somebody trying to chase me down? So, and I was bothered. More time that passed, I'm like, you know what? I do have a right to be pissed off about this. But this wasn't the case. I realized, like, hey, like I get it. Like, you're doing your job. This guy's just, aggressively shoving Monster energy drinks in every pocket he's got on his body. Might have shoved one down his pants. Who knows? So I explained myself, and that walk to the car, I'm just thinking, like, man, even if people don't know me, and it's not about that, it is to an extent, because again, if you are somebody that did know me and you saw me, and I'd say that's very unlikely. I just want to defend myself. But even if, you don't have to know who you are to feel like that embarrassment. You know what I mean? Like, people often say, like, why do you care? You'll never see these people again. And maybe that gives people the ability to do whatever and not care about getting embarrassed. Not me. Like, I don't care if I'll ever see you again. I don't want to make a complete fool of myself. So again, if you were at the grocery store and you saw me earlier and they were in fact doing a check on a shoplifting suspect, just a simple mix-up. And I don't. Was
this the same store as the previous incident?
No.
Okay.
No, close, but not
That's
the same
good.
store.
That's good though.
Yeah. It would be wild, though, if it was, because then it would be like everything coming full circle, right? It would be
really
like,
would
all
be.
right, now this time I get it, guys. This time I totally understand why you're doing what you're doing.
We're even now.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, I just wanted to get that out of the way. And, I'm not a shoplifter. I'm not a thief. Even if I knew I could get away with it, I don't think I'd be able to. And you know who? Because I think about like my mom. Like if my mom knew, I would be like, oh my God, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. So anyways, don't be a thief. Don't be a thief. All right, so we are loaded from here until 6 o'clock. We got about 8 different things I want to spend some time on. And here's the thing. We'll see if we get to that because, as you know, I am not great at managing the clock here. But we got to start with the NFL because I think we got a little bit of a letdown yesterday. I mean, I didn't find yesterday's games to be nearly as entertaining as some of the others. And not every game has been entertaining in the playoffs, but I'd say each day of action, we've had, at least 1 or 2 games that were, that delivered. And I don't want to say yesterday's games were terrible, but, and I'm not just saying this because we lost our bet, which, by the way, Buffalo scored a lot of points and even Pittsburgh. We wasn't even close, to be honest with you. But that's not why I'm saying that, yesterday's games were a little bit underwhelming. But real quick before we get to the football stuff, but I'm no more parlays, John. I'm done. Straight bets from here on out. You were a bad influence yesterday. I don't even think you.
I've already got a college basketball parlay for tonight. I'm going big or going home at this point.
I've got college basketball bets in, but I'm not doing the parlay because, like yesterday, I don't know. Did you do the parlay with me or did you?
I just took the under for Bills Steelers.
Gotcha. So, yesterday I was needing a win, meaning I needed not only to have a win to get the vibes going, but also I needed some money in the account. I wasn't, empty, but why not just do 2 picks here in the NFL? And I felt good about both. But if I would have bet the same amount on the parlay as I did on, let's just say I did 2 bets, different bets, straight bets, the same thing. But instead of putting $20 towards the parlay, I put 20 here, 20 there. It would have still felt like I won. And that's, that's that. I love parlays. I'll still do them from time to time. But like if I feel really good about a game, I'm not going to include it in any other bet because I now have this. I'm now dealing with something that everybody used to talk, crazy to me about. I mean, not insult me, but like parlays are not a sucker's bet like some people say, but it's clearly not that easy to get. And if it was, everybody would do it and we'd all make a lot of money. But the reality is that if you do, in fact, hit one, it's a way better payday than if you just hit a straight bet. But it used to never bother me. Now I'm to the point where if I feel really good about a game and it hit, but it didn't give me any return because others lost, it just kind of ruins me. Maybe I'm maturing as a bettor. I'm not sure. So again, I'll still probably do a parlay here and there, but like games that I'm really in on, like some games tonight, I'm just going to do straight bets because it's not like I'm trying to make a ton of money and retire and be that guy because, I wouldn't be able to. I'm not good at it.
I feel like a sucker. It may take me a while to get away from the parlays.
No, I don't want to. Look, the best success I've had, the only thing I've ever really been able to look at in the apps that I used to bet on or when I go and make a bet at an actual sports book is a parlay. So, it's not like I'm against them. It's just that I now have found some enjoy. I can now enjoy knowing, hey, I didn't get 150 on this bet, but I got 49 and it's still something. So don't feel like a sucker because the more we talk about it, the more I'm going to go back to doing it because it's the truth, right? Like if you're not betting a ton of money and you're just doing it for fun, why not put 3 picks together, put $10 on it? If you lose, big deal. If you win, hey, that's, potentially $60 or whatever the odds are. So don't let me influence you on what you want to do when it comes to betting. But anyways, back to the games last night. I mean, the Bills were just a lot better than the Steelers. And Pittsburgh was probably the worst team ever that made the playoffs. And I don't say that to like make fun of them because I actually find myself as a fake Steelers fan. Like I can't act like I had any emotion attached to yesterday's result. But I love Mike Tomlin. I think he is the definition of a coach as far as a leader, a guy who carries himself the right way, a guy who leads his team, and you watch his team play, and you can certainly see that they are a reflection of that coach. I mean, it may end. He's only got 1 year left on his contract, but like I'm not making fun of the Steelers, but I think a lot of people would tell you that the Steelers are a team that all throughout the year ended up with some wins. Clearly, they earned their way into the playoff, but like nobody ever watched them and felt like they were good. And sure enough, the Bills were a lot better, and they showed that yesterday. I will give the Steelers a little credit. In the beginning of the second half, they made it respectable. They were more competitive. And then the Eagles, I mean, they completely crumbled towards the end of the season, a collapse, and it carried into the playoffs, right? I mean, I guess there was hope that maybe they would snap out of it and get back to being the Eagles that we saw for a couple of years, even the Eagles maybe earlier this season. But no, they were the same team that just had all kinds of issues, and Tampa way better. And I'm sure there's more to the injury situation with Jalen Hurts than what is out there. But you now got Travis Kelce retiring. Is it or Jason Kelce? I get it. Jason Kelce's the Eagle. Travis Kelce's with Taylor Swift, right? I think
that's correct.
So I think I saw he's retiring. So it may be an end of an era. I mean, last night Aikman was honest, and I just don't think you hear this very often from guys in his position. But like their coach is, Sirianni's he may not be the coach there anymore, which is crazy. He just won the Super Bowl how many years ago? Or just was in the Super Bowl, I should say. So their owner's not patient. And this year, I mean, they collapsed. But to me, the story of yesterday's playoff games is Baker Mayfield. And I know a lot of people don't like Baker Mayfield, and I understand why. I think locally Louisville fans don't like him because him and Lamar were competing for that 2017 Heisman Trophy, and Baker got it. And I may get things thrown at me if I said this in public, but I think Baker deserved it. His team was better, and he had a phenomenal season. And I'm somebody that just understands winning the Heisman Trophy twice is just damn near impossible. So I never really thought Lamar was going to get it, even if he did deserve it. And it's not to say he didn't deserve it, but I have no problem with Baker getting it. But Baker is one of those guys that it's such a cliche, but it's true. If he's on your team, you probably love him. If he's not, you probably think he's kind of a douchebag. And I think he would even understand that people think he's that because, he's cocky. It's his brand. And it's, but I feel like he's very genuine. Like him or hate him, I feel like he is who he is. And I believe his brand, the perception of him has made it to where people don't truly realize that Baker Mayfield has one of the best stories in professional sports. And last night is another sign that it continues to be a made-for-TV story. Make a movie about it. And again, I think a lot of people know this, but just think about Baker Mayfield from start to finish as far as we know him as a football player in his career. He walked on at Texas Tech. Walked on. Didn't have offers from anybody that he wanted to go play for. He bet on himself. He had confidence in himself. So Baker Mayfield walks on at Texas Tech, becomes the first ever, and I don't know if it's happened since then, but he was the first ever Power 5 starting quarterback as a true freshman walk-on. And he was good. But, he didn't have, he's not big. He doesn't have any, there's not a whole lot about him from a physical standpoint, from a talent standpoint, where you say, wow, this guy is just different. You can't teach that. He's good, makes plays, but, he was never a highly regarded prospect. And a lot of people who watched him on film didn't think he was great because they didn't offer him. So Cliff Kingsbury is at Texas Tech. And after Baker is the starting quarterback as a redshirt freshman, has some success. Not as a redshirt freshman, a true freshman who was a walk-on. They go back to their prized recruit, and that's Davis Webb. You may know that name because he played briefly, and he's a name, but he was in and out of the league. In fact, is Davis Webb even still playing football? Because after Baker, in my opinion, did enough to where he was the guy for them in the future, they went with Davis Webb, who apparently is now he's the quarterback's coach with the Broncos. He last played in the NFL as a player in 2022. So Kingsbury goes with Davis Webb. Baker's like, all right, I'll leave. What does he do? He decides to transfer to Oklahoma and walk on, which we all know how it worked out at Oklahoma. But at the time, he decided to walk on at Oklahoma. Oklahoma was coming off of a Sugar Bowl win where they beat Nick Saban in Alabama. Trevor Knight was their quarterback. Trevor Knight was a star. Trevor Knight came back. He was the guy. And Baker Mayfield transferred in and walked on for Coach Stoops and won the job. And then he went on to have one of the best quarterback careers that I can think of. I mean, he didn't win a national championship. Therefore, you don't see him. You don't hear him mentioned with the likes of Tebow and Cam Newton. And, I'm not even saying he had a career like those guys, but he had a phenomenal career at Oklahoma. And then he gets drafted number 1 and goes to the Cleveland Browns. And you know what? That's where quarterbacks go to die. And I know a lot of quarterbacks that they've taken have been bums. They've drafted very poorly at that position. That's just what they do. That's the Browns. So in Cleveland, he's actually off to a decent start, but then as you all know, it kind of completely unraveled. And after 4 years there, they booted him. They moved on from him. And then he ended up in Carolina and was there for half of last year, and he was bad. They were 1-5, and in the end, he got benched, and they had him. This is not an exaggeration. This is real. They had Baker Mayfield doing scout team defensive end just because he was, just to kind of mock up something. I mean, he was being utilized, former number 1 pick as a quarterback, being utilized as a scout team defense guy just to be a body. And he'll do it because he's not, I mean, he's a hard worker. So then he goes to the Rams. He was there. They were terrible. He had nothing. I mean, he was there for 5 games, started 4. They went 1-3. And it looked as if his career was over. It looked like Baker Mayfield may not play in the NFL again. Or if he does, he'd be like a backup, career backup, or even like a practice squad guy or something. So last year, it looked as if he was done. I thought he was done. Well, then Tampa Bay, they're moving on from Tom Brady. They're trying to figure out what they want to do. So they bring in Baker Mayfield. He bet on himself. He took a low-level deal knowing he could probably win the job because they had, I've already forgot the guy's name who played it, Kyle Trask. I believe it was Kyle Trask. So, Baker's like, all right, this is an opportunity for me to go try to salvage my career. I think I can beat this guy out. Let's go see what happens. And what does he do? He gets him to the playoffs, and he's not a world beater. He's not he's not the best quarterback in the league by any means, but he was a part of their success this year. And last night they won a playoff game, and now they've advanced. I just think he has one. Again, I get why people don't like him, but he has a phenomenal story that I don't think gets enough credit. How about that, John? Did you know all that about Baker Mayfield?
You just gave a great biography of him.
I mean, without just take any emotion you have towards him as a person. That's a phenomenal story, is it not?
Is.
And from the beginning, walking on at A&M to, Texas Tech, not A&M, to now taking this deal in Tampa Bay, betting on himself, knowing, hey, if I get a chance, I'm going to go make plays and I'm going to get it done. And he did that. And, I'm not a fan necessarily, but I do, in fact, appreciate that story. He's a hard worker, and he's got a lot of confidence in himself. And some people get criticized too much for that. I think his internal confidence is a huge part of why he's able to do what he does. All right, quick break. We'll come back on the other side. We got a lot more to get into, including Louisville basketball is, in fact, number 1 in one specific ranking, and we'll take it. All right, it's Coffee and Company, fueled by Thornton's here on Sports Talk 790.
Hats and cards coverage. Sports Talk 790.
Sharp left eye, you'll never run when you commit the crime. Sharp left eye, you'll get burned, and now you gotta do the time.
You're listening to Coffee and Company with Nick Coffey on Sports Talk 790.
I have not mentioned it yet, but we are going to have a guest coming up here in about 30 minutes. We're going to talk to Zach Barnett of Football Scoop. He'll join us. A lot to react to from college. Well, I was going to say a lot to react to when it comes to college football's season coming to an end, which is true. But, man, Saban retiring, DeBoer going to Bama, Jetfish going to Arizona. We've now got a report that, and it may have already happened, honestly, but the athletic director at Texas A&M is apparently being pursued by Ohio State and may end up there. And it's because A&M is believed to have the best resources when it comes to NIL. And clearly it's because they have a lot of supporters. But the athletic director however you're allowed to, and I'm sure he probably did some things that he's not allowed to because I think everybody's doing that. But nonetheless, this is a guy that is believed to have helped in whatever way he can put in place a phenomenal NIL system to where, they got a lot of money, a lot of resources, and it's helping them get players. So we'll talk to Zach Barnett coming up at 4:00. But when it comes to the NFL, in the playoffs, we now have the matchups because yesterday's games have now concluded. We got the Texans and the Ravens. That'll get things started at 4:30 on Saturday. Man, I hope Lamar and the Ravens crush the Texans. But am I wrong for worrying about this game? Not because I know the Ravens are better and I'm not worried about how good they are, but I don't want them to have the playoff, whatever you call that. I don't want them to have the playoff jitters and potentially crumble like Dallas did, which I don't think they will. It's not like they've won a Super Bowl within the last decade, maybe close to it. So I don't think it'll happen. I hope it doesn't, but I just want Lamar to make a deep run so badly. And then after that game, it'll be the Packers and the Niners. And then Sunday, we've got the Buccaneers and the Lions, first game. And then at 6:30, it'll be the Chiefs and the Bills, which will no doubt be the most talked about matchup, I would say, from the weekend. But then again, the Packers and the Niners, all these games honestly could be pretty good. I would say, and this is what I said last week. I thought the Packers and the Cowboys had the best chance of being a blowout. And then in the end, it ended up being a blowout, but not the way that I thought it would be. But real quick, before we get to the phone lines, there's a lot of Louisville representation in the playoffs, more so than I realized, with Lamar and the Ravens, Jair and the Packers, Yaya Diaby. He had a phenomenal rookie season for the Bucs. He even made a big impact last night. Teddy with the Lions, and then Jonathan Grenard and Sheldon Rankins are two key pieces for the Texans. So you got Malik Cunningham and Teddy. Malik's also with the Ravens, but those are two guys that, aren't making a big impact. But everybody else, Lamar, Jair, Yaya, Grenard, and Rankins, those are guys that, are impact players for teams that have made it this far in the playoffs, which is great to see, because the more, I know none of these guys played for Jeff Brom, but the more, those guys have success at the high level. I don't know how much it'll help you in recruiting, but I know it can't hurt you. So good stuff, no doubt. All right, if you want to be a part of the show today, you can. 502-571-7900 is the number. If you want to give us a call, you can also get in touch on the L&N Federal Credit Union text line, 502-653-0790. And we will go to the phone lines now, and we will welcome in Nino. Nino, what's happening?
My man, Mick, what's going on now?
Not much. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. I guess two questions. NFL. First question. An NFL team, success or non-success? Obviously, if you get a bad coach in there, you got to fire them. Every coach is not going to be successful. But with that being said, the front office's job to recognize that and fire them. So with that, is an NFL team's success, is it heavily contingent upon who the front office is?
Absolutely. Nino, I would say the front office and the GM, if they are truly in charge of personnel in regards to player acquisition, draft picks, coaches, this may be an unpopular opinion. I think you could make the case that that's one of, if not the most important components to it. If you have a really, I mean, if you put it all together and your coach stinks, or and the players are not getting it done, it's different. But no, I think the front office is very important.
Right. So with that being said, my last question: should Jerry Jones take the brunt of the blame?
Absolutely.
With the Dallas Cowboys.
Absolutely.
Thank you, man. I'm glad somebody.
Yeah.
I can't get through to these people, man. I'm like, I don't care who you get as coach there. He's gonna be there, and it's gonna be his way or the highway.
I think that's why McCarthy's been there the last 2 years. To be honest with you, I feel like Jerry knows that Jerry's got a comfortable, I guess, control there to where that guy's the head coach and he's out there, calling plays and whatnot. But overall, like, everybody knows Jerry's still running the show, and owners that are too involved, it's an issue. But you know what? They own the team. That's got to be. Are you a Cowboys fan, Nino?
I just left, Mick. I burned my jersey as of
wow.
I'm a Houston, Texas there.
I'm sorry to hear that, because what I think, if you're a diehard fan of a team and you've got a lot of emotion invested and you've been a fan your whole life, your owner being a bad owner who won't get out of the way and let football folks handle it, you're helpless. What do? They own the team, right?
What
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. You can't fire him. I mean, nobody's going to fire him.
That's right.
So I don't know how his son is. It sounds like the tradition is going to continue. I don't know. So I'm in Houston now, Mick. I'm went an NFL fan shop and ordered my
time
CJ
to get
Stroud.
on board, man. Stroud has got it rolling. And Nino, I appreciate the call, man. Good to hear from you. Yeah, this is actually, I meant to bring this up last week, and we never got around to it. But this is a story that it may be more common than I'm aware of, but Bob Myers was the GM for the Golden State Warriors. And, think about what they put together. I mean, he drafted so well. I mean, getting Steph and other teams didn't, by the way. They let Steph slide. Draymond Green in the second round, clearly a great value pick. Klay Thompson. I mean, Bob Myers built that. And you know what? They had success early on with Mark Jackson, but he thought, you know what? We need more. I'm going to get rid of Mark Jackson, which was not a very popular thing to do. Brought in Steve Kerr. They had a dynasty. So I think he stepped down at Golden State. I don't believe he was somebody that got fired. But either way, he's now been hired, let me just double check this here. I don't want to, yeah. So he was hired by the Washington Commanders to be an advisor and a consultant in the team's search of their next head coach and GM. So he's helping he's helping an NFL franchise do GM type of stuff. And I just think that's odd. I mean, then again, when you consider what the job is, if you're a GM, you're probably not. This sounds crazy to say, because I don't know how you could be a GM of an NFL or an NBA team and not be at least well versed in the sport. But either way, if it's just a personnel thing, if it's knowing contracts and all that, then I'm sure he could do it. But and now, it sounds like there's a chance. I'm reading here from Sports Illustrated. This was last week. Maybe things have changed, that he could potentially serve as their GM. Like, maybe that's what they end up doing, which would be, to me, I think that's very odd, but maybe it's happened before and I'm just unaware of it. But GMs are, GMs are super important, but I remember as a kid, being obsessed with the NBA and the NFL and like not really knowing what a GM was. You hear about it from time to time. I was young, really young, whenever the Bulls had, Bulls GM Jerry Krause, and clearly he was fighting with Phil Jackson and didn't want to give Jackson a contract, and that was well documented in the Last Dance docuseries. But I remember probably being around like 9 or 10 years old, realizing what a GM does in most instances for a professional franchise, NBA and NFL. And it blew my mind that the head coach of NBA teams and NFL teams at times don't really decide who is on the team. They don't make those decisions. Now, clearly they have influence, and there are some coaches, like, for example, Bill Belichick, who's now out at we'll talk about him later because he's going to land somewhere, and there's a clear reason why. But he was somebody that kind of served as the GM and coach, and then there was the owner, Bob Kraft. So, to me, it's crazy to hire a head coach who you are, he's essentially the manager of the franchise as far as personnel, right? Maybe they're not negotiating contracts. That's not part of it. But like, if a coach can't determine which personnel he uses, I mean, not to say that they're useless because you got to coach, but I just feel like that's very counterproductive. And it made me very sad to know that, like, wait a second, Phil Jackson, he's not responsible for like putting this team together. And it just was surprise. It was a surprise to me. Like, I didn't believe it. I remember my dad explaining it to me. Like, no, there's GMs who are, really the guys who decide if a coach is going to be retained and if, which players get drafted and whatnot. And it just made me feel and think less of the head coaching position in pro sports. And I know that it matters in a major way, but the reality now is that there's so much money tied into these players, these star franchise players, to where if you're a head coach in the NBA or the NFL, you could be having some level of a disconnect with your star player. And if that's the case, your days are numbered. They'll get rid of your ass as soon as they can, because the reality is this: you are a cheaper expense to them. And this star player who they've got so much money wrapped into, they've got to find somebody to make it work with that player. And if you can't do it, they'll find somebody else. Like, it is sad, I think, at times, like what the coaching position has turned into here and there. Like, there's still some great coaches out there that clearly have a huge impact. But yeah, the GM, the front office is hugely responsible for a lot. And the owner, at times, there's some owners that don't get involved at all. But obviously Jerry Jones is not one of those owners. So, yeah, I remember, and Jerry, if you're a GM, you've got to understand that that's not a position of visibility. People aren't going to watch on TV. They're not going to show up to the arenas and the stadiums and see a great team that came together, that had a perfect draft class the last 2 years, that had, a really, they did great in free agency. They put it together. I mean, the GM is hugely responsible. When fans show up, they don't think of the GM. You think when people went to the Bulls games in the 90s, they thought of Jerry Krause? No, they thought of Jordan and Phil Jackson. And in the end, that burned Jerry Krause, because he couldn't stand that nobody realized he did all this, because he did. He was responsible for putting it all together. He hired Phil Jackson. And then when they got too big, well, they didn't get too big. They got too big in his eyes for him not to be getting some attention. He's not on the billboards. Phil Jackson is. Phil Jackson's the one with all these rings and taking photos. Now, you get a ring too if you're a GM, but you have to be selfless, because I thought I knew his name, but when we started talking about Bob Myers, I had to Google Bob Myers, because I thought that was his name, but I wasn't quite sure. And you know why his name didn't just come to me, other than the fact that I'm no longer very good with names, is because you don't think of him when you think of the Warriors, but he's the guy who literally put it all together. So you have to be able to be selfless and understand that you're not going to get a whole lot of love and credit and notoriety for a phenomenal franchise that really you are hugely responsible for. And I think that'd be tough to do, to be honest with you. I got an ego. I think everybody has an ego to an extent. If I was somebody who literally put together a dynasty and I could walk around town and nobody knew who the hell I was, it'd probably bother me. But again, I'm an insecure human. I've talked about that many times. All right, we got to run. Quick break. We'll come back and keep this thing rolling along. A great night of college basketball, by the way. I mean, it's not like loaded to where you won't believe the matchups, but we've got Indiana and Purdue, a rivalry matchup. The Hoosiers could really get their season headed in the right direction with an upset. Kansas State Baylor, a sneaky good matchup. You've got Jerome Tank going up against his former boss. So we'll get into some college hoops. And again, don't forget, coming up at 4 o'clock, we're going to talk with Zach Barnett of footballscoop.com. It's Coffey and Company. We are Fueled by Thornton's right here on Sports Talk 790.
The KSR Pre-Show with Shannon the Dude and Billy Rutland. Tomorrow morning at 9 on Sports Talk 790.
Got whiskey river on the jukebox, a honky-tonk sawdust.
You're listening to Coffee and Company with Nick Coffey on Sports Talk 790.
That's right. Coffee and Company rolling along here on Sports Talk 790. Real quick, I do want to let you know that we'll at some point get to it. I don't know how much time we'll spend on it because I'm not really sure how. I mean, it's something worth bringing up, but I'm not really sure how we make it a good talking point. But Jeff Goodman, college basketball insider, has put together his rankings of the 20 worst coaching hires in college basketball since 2000, and Kenny Payne came in at number 1. So, we'll probably save that for the 4:00 hour. I mean, I think the list is actually interesting to look at when it comes to all the other coaches, but to see Kenny Payne there, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like it's unfortunate to see, but I'm not going to 50 minutes into the show start taking it in the direction of just being, honest about Louisville basketball, which in turn makes me seem like a jerk and the most miserable person ever. But, going in, when you won 4 games in your first year, and then, you come back for a second year, the question I asked during the offseason here and there, and I didn't even ask it as much as I wanted to because, I know what it sounds like, and it's just, it's not fun. But what was what was more likely to happen heading into year 2 of Kenny Payne? He'll make a huge jump and we'll have a tournament caliber team, which, by the way, 64 teams make the tournament, 68 actually. Or he ends up going down as the worst or one of the worst hires in the history of the sport. And as of right now, they're playing better basketball. They're not good, but they beat Miami. They were competitive. I now can at least watch and keep focus, keep attention on the game because they're competing and it's close. At least it has been. Tomorrow could be rough because they play Carolina on the road, but that's just where we are. And that's not news to anybody. That's not a surprise. I think you could maybe make a case, make the case for other coaches maybe being ahead of Kenny. But what makes Kenny the number 1 worst hire, I would assume in the eyes of Jeff, is the fact that he is at Louisville. And Louisville is one of the best jobs in the country. And they're this bad. So there may not be much more to add to that other than what I just said. But I don't want people to think we're just ignoring it. Because when it comes to taking shots at Kenny Payne, that's what we do here. We should get some updated liners, right, John, for the station? You want to hear Kenny Payne slander? Sports Talk 790.
Instead of the Mookie Wilson rookie card in your wallet.
He's been all over Kenny Payne's ass since day 1. Coffee and Company, Nick Coffey. Is that the radio voice guy that does the liner?
That's pretty close.
And look, I'm being sarcastic because I don't feel like I've ever gone out. I mean, it's not personal. It's just I don't know how anybody could assess Louisville basketball throughout and not be very, honest about it. And for those that are, why keep Brent? That's my job. I mean, do you think I go around talking Louisville basketball when I'm not on the air? Why would I do that? I would cry myself to sleep. I mean, anyways, we'll get to that later on. But what I do want to talk about is my friends, my family, the folks over at the Louisville Men's Clinic. And again, you've heard about them for a long time because they've been helping gentlemen like yourself. I know ladies are listening too, but this is for the gentlemen. And actually, maybe ladies, if you're listening, you could potentially convince your man, hey, he could benefit from going and seeing Dr. Wood at the Louisville Men's Clinic because maybe, he could benefit. I mean, I'm benefiting from it. So, and I can only speak for myself. Maybe, maybe your husband wouldn't need the great services that they have there. But look, it's erectile dysfunction, low testosterone, Peyronie's disease. That's what they've been doing for over 10 years here in this city. And they've treated thousands of people and helped them become happier and healthier. And when I hear Louisville Men's Clinic, at least forever, I've always just assumed like it's somebody who can't perform in the bedroom, which I don't. I'm assuming that's like a sophomoric like type of thing to talk about, but it's the truth. It happens to men. And that's unfortunate, but there's things you can do about it. And it's not like you're a broken man and there's something wrong with you. When you get older, that's part of it. Well, for those who were curious about my erectile dysfunction, I don't have that, but I did have low testosterone and I had no clue. And I will let you guys know if I ever do get erectile dysfunction because I'm sure you care. But my point is this. If you're 30s like me, I'm 35. I'm not young, but I'm not old. So I'm kind of in the middle. Like I'm an adult, kind of, right? I got kids. I got responsibility. I got a job. Like I'm a grown up, kind of. But I just chalked up my lack of energy, my my flab here and there. I mean, just to be direct with you, like I've been working out for a while now. I'm not a bodybuilder, but I feel like I've been doing enough to make sure I maintain, decent health. I watch what I eat. I do exercise, and I wasn't getting the results. I was getting man boobs, and I'm like, what's going on here? What is this? And sure enough, I'm like, you know what? Like I've lost my edge. Something may be up, or maybe I'm getting old. But either way, why not reach out to our partners at the Louisville Men's Clinic and see if there's something they could, see if I could benefit from one of their services. And sure enough, I got my testosterone levels checked, and my testosterone was very low for my age. But where it gets tricky is that if you go get lab work done for your doctor, there's a good chance your doctor is going to tell you that your testosterone level is fine because there's a huge range of it. And if you fall in this huge range, your doctor's probably going to tell you that you're fine. But there's a level that you should have, a range specifically for your age range. And mine was not there at all. So I've now been working with them for a couple of weeks, and I'm getting better workouts in. I feel like a brand new man. My energy level is up. And honestly, without really changing anything, right? I'm still watching what I eat. I'm still working out. Like that hasn't changed. But now that I've been getting testosterone treatment from the men's clinic, I'm losing weight. I mean, my pants are too big now. So I can't recommend them enough. And I know there's a lot of people right now listening that are close to my age, maybe a little older, maybe a little younger, and you're probably feeling the same thing. And you probably just chalk it up to, hey, it's life. I'm getting older. And maybe that's the case to an extent. But if you feel like you're truly doing your part and things just aren't adding up, go get your levels checked. And I assume if your levels are low, you'll go through with it and you'll be happy that you did. This is the kind of thing that I know a lot of the patients that go see Dr. Wood at the Louisville Men's Clinic, I know they tell him, I should have done this years ago. So again, reach out to him, 502. Let me make sure. Yeah, their number is super easy to remember. And here I am just flustering. But website, LouisvilleMen'sClinic.com, and the phone number, again, it's easy, 502-444-4000. So 502-444-4000 if you want to give them a call. And again, you can check them out online, LouisvilleMen'sClinic.com. All right, we got 2 hours left. We will get it started here with our man, Zach Barnett of Football Scoop. He'll join us to get the hour started and take you up to 6 o'clock. It's Coffee and Company. We are Fueled by Thornton's right here on Sports Talk 790.
studios. This is Sports Talk 790. It's time for Coffee and Company, fueled by Thornton's on Sports Talk 790. Now here's Nick Coffey.
All right, let's get it started here. It is hour number 2 on a very cold Tuesday afternoon here in Louisville, Kentucky, and we're going to get the hour started by going down to Texas, where we welcome in our man, Mr. Zach Barnett of Football Scoop. What's the temperature, Zach, in the great state of Texas right now?
Earlier this morning, we had schools canceled because it was simply too cold. Wind chill
really
was down to 0. Yeah, it was just flat out too cold.
Well, here I am thinking that I was going to ask you what the weather was, and you were going to tell me it was like 60 degrees or something. So I guess it's just cold everywhere.
Yeah. You know what it is? It's God mourning the end of college football.
That's probably what it is. It's like a big cold funeral. That's what it is. And college football will rise back once again in the summer as we get set for another season. But one coach that won't be there is Nick Saban. And I'll just ask you this: a month ago, if you got wind that Nick Saban would in fact be stepping down, who would you have said is the next coach?
That's a good question. I probably would have gone Dan Lanning just due to the fact that he'd been there before, and it was pretty stunning to watch it play out in real time. The fact that, Nick Saban has many legacies in college football, but the fact that he seeded nearly every SEC program at one point or another with one of his former assistants, and the fact that either none of them would be offered the job or none of them would be interested in the job, and that Alabama would either by choice or by necessity go completely outside the family that was the most surprising part to me.
Yeah. And I mean, Saban, you could spend there's probably things that nobody's yet to really uncover or realize when it comes to the impact that he had on college football and just the state of Alabama and their university. I mean, the amount of people who decided to go to Alabama because of the brand that was established, and not established, but kind of, brought back to life under Saban. And of course it hit a new level is crazy. It's I've never been an Alabama fan, and I've never really found myself pulling for Alabama, but towards the end here, even this year, like whenever, they slipped up and lost to Texas and everybody thought that Saban was done. In the end, they were right. He did retire, but if they'd have won the national championship this year, nobody would be surprised, because that's just that's what Alabama football was under Nick Saban. Now, the coaches that got extensions from this whole thing, Mike Norvell, Dan Lanning, and who's the other one? Sark. How many of those coaches do you think were truly pursued or even offered? I feel like it may be tough to know if they were offered, because it seemed like it would have been a quick offer. But do you think that there was a real interest level from those from Alabama to those coaches?
I would be surprised. I don't have any proprietary info here, but again, I would be surprised if Lanning and Sark did not just at least get phone calls.
Yeah.
Or, and especially the fact that those guys are repped by Jimmy Sexton. I mean, you wouldn't even necessarily need to have a phone call. But if you're
Sark and Lanning are both Jimmy Sexton clients?
I believe so.
I didn't know that. That makes total sense, but I didn't know that.
I mean, if you're Greg Byrne, you can say you got your number one target, and of course he's the only guy they offer the job to. But you're not doing your job if you get on a plane to Seattle and first don't at least see what those guys think about the job before you offer it to somebody else. So, did Alabama sit down and have a conversation with Steve Sarkisian? I don't believe that ever happened. Did they have one with Dan Lanning? I don't believe that ever happened. But did Greg Byrne have an idea of their, I guess, lack of interest before he pursued Kalen DeBoer? I believe absolutely.
Mike Norvell never had a chance, right? Like, given what happened with Florida State this year, there's just no scenario that they were interested in him and he just decided, nope, I'm staying here. I mean, to me, that was the one that just didn't seem as realistic. especially when you just consider the ACC and the SEC. But then again, Saban and Bama, that whole situation is truly, I think, a once-in-a-lifetime scenario that I could think of in my lifetime, where clearly a phenomenal job, great resources, you have everything you need to be successful, and there's probably not a coach that was at a better position. But I could see maybe some coaches saying, hell no, I think I could win there, but I ain't Saban, and I don't want to walk into that and follow in those footsteps. So again, who knows if those guys got offered, but I do feel like maybe I'm crazy, but I think people would turn down Bama, and it would shock a lot of folks. But if you really think about it, it would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we saw was all the speculation of 10 years of Saban. Just you wait until Saban leaves. And I certainly think there was a time when they would have just handed the keys to Dabo and everyone would have been happy. And who knows, maybe even Kirby Smart, but that time's come and gone. And it was interesting to see Alabama, the King Kong of college football, the New York Yankees of college football, and that they're just kind of synonymous with the sport. They were subject to the same market realities as everyone else. And I do believe I'm with you that Mike Norvell was kind of the last on the list. Maybe that's just because he was the last guy to announce his extension before Alabama hired Kalen DeBoer. But I think in some ways he would have been a great candidate there. I mean, he's built Florida State back from they were worse off than Washington was when DeBoer got there, and you can't hold the Orange Bowl against them. They certainly would have been a playoff team had Jordan Travis remained healthy. And I mean, that's a guy who you look at the beginning of his Florida State tenure. That's more adversity than some guys face in his careers. And there was a time when I thought it was going to swallow him whole, and he emerged stronger from it. And he would have gotten Alabama with recruiting ties to the area. But they chose to not go that direction, and it's understandable.
Sure. I think whenever Norvell was at Memphis, I remember being a little bit stunned that he wasn't getting more traction for Louisville whenever Bobby Petrino was fired. And I don't really know why, but sure enough, he ends up at Florida State and didn't get off to a good start. But in the last couple of years, he's broke through, and I don't see them taking many steps back or any steps back, really moving forward. But yeah, I like Mike Norvell, but it just, to me, it seemed as if, he was somebody that probably, given the way things played out and the way that, it was out of their control, right? I mean, they won every game and still got left out, but I feel like it was a good situation for him to kind of like I think Florida State fans probably feel good because they probably believe that Alabama wanted their coach, and yet they got screwed. And it was an awful way to end their season in every aspect of getting burned by the committee, although I think it was the right decision. And then also, the way they lost to Georgia. But now that, I think the way it played out does in fact make sense. Now that we know that it is Kalen DeBoer that is the guy at Bama, I mean, we all know about his resume now, a guy who's climbed the ladder and been impressive at every level. I mean, your thoughts? I mean, given, the landscape, do you feel like that's a hire that makes sense for them? I've not heard much criticism for it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's funny. I think you're seeing some people kind of try to talk themselves into a take that I'm sure will ferment by the time we get to August. Is Alabama actually going to be better coached in 2024 than they were in 2023? I
that's the kind of momentum he has.
Yeah. And, he's got, I think the Alabama fan base is going to be the biggest fans of all time of the 2019 Indiana Hoosiers that you've ever seen since they put that dream team together with Kane Womack as his defensive coordinator. But I mean, I'm a big fan of the guy. You don't go 104-13 at any level of sports by accident. All the guy's done throughout his entire career is win. And, I would probably, if you put the sports gun to my head, I'd take the field over Alabama to win a national championship over, say, the next 5 years. But I expect Alabama to remain, a fixture in that race. And there's just so much to play out that we don't know how he's going to recruit, how he's going to handle the portal, all that stuff. But I think it's a good hire.
Zach Barnett of Football Scoop is our guest, joining us here on Sports Talk 790. Michigan national champions Jim Harbaugh has interviewed at least for one opening. Probably won't be the only one. He interviewed for the Chargers job. Just your feel for his situation? Do you think he's going to take one of these NFL jobs if he gets offered? It certainly seems like one of these franchises is bound to offer him. At least that's the noise that's out there. Maybe that's just what he wants out there. Do you think he'd go? And if so, is the obvious move to just elevate Sherrone Moore?
Yes, I do believe Jim Harbaugh's coached his last game at Michigan, and I thought that win or lose last Monday night. And I think the next guy is already in the building.
Former Louisville assistant, Zach. How about that?
Whether he can, I think he'd be the first to tell you his Louisville days that got him
absolutely
to the cusp of coaching the defending national champion.
Without Sherrone Moore at Louisville with Charlie Strong over a decade ago, they don't win the national championship last week. Facts.
No, that's absolutely true. Whether he's able, I mean, he did a fantastic job as the interim, especially in that Ohio State game. Whether he can maintain that energy for 52 weeks a year, obviously we'll have to wait and see. But if you're Michigan, you've got such a good thing, and you climb such a hard road to get here that there's no doubt you could go out and hire a really good head coach. But you've got to at least see if you can keep it going. And David Shaw did a really good job for a time as the head coach at Stanford, taking over for Jim Harbaugh. And I think you've got to keep the train rolling along the track it's currently on.
All right, let's talk administration here, because Ross Bjork, am I saying that right? Ross Bjork, is that how you say it?
I think it's Bjork.
Bjork. Okay, no, so the J, yeah,
yes.
Bjork. So he's gone from Ole Miss. He was there from 2012 to 2019. Has been at A&M since 2019, and now he's heading to Ohio State. I feel like you don't often, maybe I'm wrong here, but I feel like you don't often see the high-profile ADs kind of move around, right? I don't think to me it seems kind of unusual to see this much movement. But the reports that I have, the reading, I shouldn't say it's reports, but I guess just more so opinions being put out there by a lot of folks reacting to this news as he's leaving A&M to go to Ohio State, is that NIL was such a powerful thing for A&M despite their struggles and lack of success, that Ohio State is now bringing him in because they feel like he could help initiate a better system, which I'm not even sure if that's allowed, but we all know they're doing things they're not really allowed to do, but you got to be careful about it. But just curious your thoughts on this. I mean, A&M, it seems like a great job for him, and now he's going to Ohio State. I'm sure it's a great job as well. But do you think NIL is a big factor in them pursuing him?
I hadn't really thought of that. My initial reaction was I don't know why Ohio State would hire him. I don't think he's done a great job at A&M. If you just look at the on-field results and on-court results, there was a time, middle of the previous decade, where you could have argued Texas A&M had the hottest athletic department in all the country, and that was pre-Ross Bjork, and no one would be arguing that today. I think his hires.
Who was there before him?
Obviously, he didn't. Oh shoot!
Was it a guy who went to LSU, or there's some kind of an LSU
Scott
component?
Woodward, yes, it was Scott Woodward.
Is he the one who gave Jimbo the crazy contract?
He gave him the contract, but Bjork was there when they gave him the extension. So blood on both of their hands there.
And the extensions are worse because they're oftentimes just not necessary.
Yeah. If they had just let him work under his original deal, then Jimbo would have been over halfway through it.
Yep.
By the time they fired him. So I think Ole Miss fans weren't sad to see him leave, and I don't think A&M fans are sad to see him leave. And if you look at your Twitter account, Ohio State's gotten, I think, literally everyone other than Marvin Harrison back. And these days you don't do that without a solid NIL program. So it seems to me, I'm sure they can improve. It seems to me like they're doing pretty well in that department.
Now, what did you make of the Florida State situation? Because I think there's still so much gray area with NIL, and it's all like people are probably just doing what they assume is allowed. And I know that the administration in the athletic departments, they do have folks who try to remind them of compliance, but it's never been to me as big of a gray area as it is right now. So again, maybe this just makes me seem like a dumbass, and I do that pretty often from 3 to 6 on this station. But what they accused Florida State of doing that led to them getting punished, I thought that is literally what everybody did, and that's just how it worked, and it wasn't against the rules.
I maybe if you're a dumbass, then I'm there with you because
All right.
that was my.
It makes two of us.
Yeah, I thought that's literally the textbook of how it's done, and certainly we're not alone. And I think people that are in our club with us are college football coaches that have and are doing the exact same thing.
And there are coaches across the country that read that and are like, oh crap, like I've been doing that since day one. And it just is a reminder of how little, full control the NCAA has on, on anything. So, all right, last question for you, Zach, before we let you go. Do you think we'll see any big conference realignment stuff this offseason? It's been pretty chaotic the last couple of off seasons. I know obviously you've got some big moves coming where the ACC is bringing in a couple of California teams, obviously Oklahoma, Texas to the SEC. The Big Ten's adding some West Coast teams as well. Will this be the first offseason where we don't have any big news in regards to some movement?
I mean, I think that at this point, kind of like the on-field product and NIL and all that stuff, it's in the hands of the courts.
Yeah.
If Florida State's able to sue their way out of the ACC, I 100% believe they will do that, and other schools will follow suit. But if that does not happen, then I don't see any big free agents left on the board that would move at this point. I mean, the SEC is not picking up Arizona State. I can promise you that.
Last question, I lied. If Florida State's able to find a legal maneuver to get out, where would they end up? SEC, Big Ten, which one?
Big Ten makes the most sense.
Just to give them presence down there.
Yeah, and they've already completely thrown logic to the wind in regards to geography, and they've got the financial incentive to continue expanding, whereas the SEC does not.
Zach, you are the man. Stay warm down there in Texas. I don't know if I'll ever say that to another soul, but you've informed me that it is in fact cold there like it is here. So bundle up, stay warm, and we will talk to you soon. All right, buddy?
Sounds good.
All right, that's Zach Barnett of footballscoop.com. Always appreciate him making time for us. Good stuff there. All right, we got to run. Quick break. We'll come back, keep this thing rolling along. We'll get back into this ranking because Louisville basketball, they're number one for the first time ever in one specific ranking, but it's not a ranking you want to be even ranked in at all, whether it be number 1 or 20. But we'll get to that and a lot more. It's Coffey and Company, fueled by Thornton's on Sports Talk 790.
Sports Talk 790. You're listening to Coffee and Company with Nick Coffey on Sports Talk 790.
That's right, Coffee and Company. We're about halfway through here on a very cold Tuesday afternoon. And I think, let me see here. Did JCPS do NTI today? Not that you would know, John, because you don't have kids. But yeah, we got notified earlier today that it's once again going to be another NTI day, which means kids don't have to go to school. And you mentioned snow on the way. I mean, are we talking? And this is one thing I like about you, John. Like you wouldn't just tell me there's going to be snow unless you really believed it. Now, again, I assume you are, in fact, relying on the word from the meteorologist. But I mean, are we getting like big snow or just like more snow?
No, it's just like another couple of inches. Probably enough to cover the grass a little more. A couple
inches can go a long way.
It can. It can.
A couple inches can really be a big deal if if you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I if it's going to be this cold, I will certainly take the snow. But it's so cold that my car warms up, but I never warm up. Like yesterday was one of those days where I didn't leave the house I don't think I left the house other than to go to the gym. And I got sweaty, worked out, but I feel like this is the kind of cold that you never really warm up. And that's not fun. I have oftentimes mentioned that I'm somebody that does enjoy cold weather, winter. And I mean, I believe I'm still that way, but
you like the coziness of the inside.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
And I used to think like, I was more built for this kind of weather, and I'm not sure that I am now, which is disappointing, no doubt. All right, if you guys want to be a part of the show today, you can do it. We'll open up the phone lines coming up here after this segment, and then we will get to the text line coming up here shortly. If you want to text in, 502-653-0790. That is the L&N Federal Credit Union text line. Members get more at L&N Federal Credit Union. You can learn more and open your account today at lnfcu.com. All right, so this list is one that I guess came out earlier today. That's the first time I saw it. But it's from Jeff Goodman, who I assume a lot of you are familiar with. Jeff Goodman is, I believe, probably the most, I mean, he's not as visible as he once was because he no longer works for ESPN, but, he is as connected as anybody in college basketball, I would say. And I know a lot of folks don't like him. And to be honest with you, I think Jeff, the fact that at certain times he's made it to where the UK fan base and the Louisville fan base hate
Keep up on the latest UK sports on Kentucky Sports Radio with Matt Jones. Tomorrow at 10 on Sports Talk 790. You're listening to Coffee and Company with Nick Coffey on Sports Talk 790.
That's right. Coffee and Company here on Sports Talk 790. We are fueled by Thornton's. Shout out to our family, our friends over at Thornton's. If you've not signed up to become a member at the Refreshing Rewards program, you should, because, you know, you'll save money every time you get gas. There's all kinds of great perks that come with it. Again, instant fuel savings. And it's easy. All you have to do is download the app or go to refreshingrewards.com, and you'll be good to go. You'll realize you should have done it long ago, and you'll think, wow, Nick was right. I don't know why I didn't listen to him sooner. All right. This is something that is funny to me that may not be funny to anybody else. And I guess it's really not funny, but Hulk Hogan is in the news, John. And do you know why? Have you seen the Hulk Hogan headlines?
I haven't.
Hulk Hogan is in the news for doing a really good deed. So apparently he was driving in, I believe, Tampa, Florida, where he is from. And he happened to see a vehicle that had been in an accident. Now, I don't know how severe the accident was, but it was in Hollywood, Florida, I think. And he stopped. The car's turned over, but he helped rescue a woman that was involved. And it looks as if she's completely fine, but the accident did result in her car being flipped over. I'm looking at a picture right now from TMZ. So great deed by the Hulkster, right?
Of course.
That's him really being the American hero. He was that for years with wrestling. And I know he's had, there's some things out there about the Hulkster that, don't necessarily make him look like a great guy. And I get it, but I kind of get lost in, watching him wrestle when I was a kid. I'm a big Hulk Hogan guy. The character as a human, I don't know him, so I'm not going to act like he's a great guy, but just imagine being in a turned over vehicle where your vehicle, you've gotten into a wreck, your vehicle's turned over. That's got to be one of the scariest things that could happen. Like, if you're okay, that's great, but you probably are like thinking to yourself, am I paralyzed? I cannot imagine being in an accident where my car turns over. So that happens. You're probably in disbelief, but the disbelief hits a different level when you realize as you're in your car upside down, probably thinking, how the hell am I going to get out of here? Am I going to die? And all of a sudden, and I'm just trying to envision how this played out. Somebody's head's down there near your window because, again, your car's turned over, and it's freaking Hulk Hogan. And he says, "Give me your hand, brother." And you're thinking, this can't be real. I'm dreaming. Wake me up. There's no way that I had an accident where my car turned over, and yet I'm seemingly just fine. And it's the one, the only Hulkamaniac pulling you out of your car. Think about that.
You think you're hallucinating because you just experienced something that could have been tragic.
Yeah.
And you may just think you've woken up in a different realm and you were talking to Hulk Hogan.
Well, it's one of those things where the internet captures everything. Cell phones now make it to where you can document just about everything. But 25 years ago, nobody would believe you if you told them that story. You'd have to get formal documentation that it happened, or nobody would believe it. Like, Hulk would have to do an interview talking about it, because how else would anybody know that it happened?
Or get him to sign something on your way out. If that'd be, what's the word I'm looking for?
Some kind of hey, proof that he was there. Maybe maybe you had like a Polaroid camera on you, but you're probably not thinking of that. You just nearly died in a wreck. But that's one of those things where we'll never know, and it's not important because he did it, and that matters. He helped somebody in need. But if he did it thinking he would get attention for it, some would say maybe it's not as sincere, and I guess it's not, but either way, he did it. But I would, the people who do great things, and some would say that's not great. That's just what you should do as a human. And you're probably right. But it goes back to a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago about people who do in fact donate an insane amount of money anonymously, or give their time and do not want anybody to know that they're doing it. That is like the true. That's the definition of a true selfless person that does in fact want to help people, but doesn't want any of the accolades. And I've always thought about how at times it seems so obvious that people are doing things like donating or whatever because they want the PR hit from it. And that's, I don't think that's wrong, but it does make it seem less genuine. But either way, they're still doing it. And that still counts. It still matters. It's still a good deed. And the fact that we now have the ability to make it a PR thing where you got cameras following you as you go see a sick kid in the hospital. Again, it may be all for you, but either way, you're doing it, and it's for someone, and it's a good thing. So shout out to Hulk Hogan, who, I don't know if he helped save a life, but either way, he helped pull somebody out of a vehicle that was upside down after they got into a wreck. And I just cannot imagine being the person that realizes that the face that's right there in the window that's like telling you you're going to be okay and probably calling you brother is like, doesn't seem real. Like that, a month would go by, 6 months would go by, and you would think there's no way that happened. You wake up in the morning thinking, well, there's no way that happened, because that's insanity, but it did happen. And again, you can't make it up. Can't make it up. All right, we got another hour to go. I believe we fixed our audio issues. So, those who are watching on the stream, apologies. We should be good to go now. And we're going to finish strong here. A lot more to get into as we wrap up here. One more hour to go. It's Coffey and Company. We are Fueled by Thornton's on Sports Talk 790.
Broadcasting from the TriCounty4.com studios. This is Sports Talk 790. It's time for Coffee and Company, fueled by Thornton's on Sports Talk 790. Now here's Nick Coffey.
All right, let's get it started here. Our 5 o'clock hour on a Tuesday afternoon. Coffee and Company, fueled by Thornton's. You know the drill. If you want to be a part of the show, you can. You can join us on the phone lines, 502-571-7900. You can also text in on the L&N Federal Credit Union text line, 502-653-0790. Been a busy show so far. First 2 hours went by crazy fast, which is a good sign. That means we're getting after it. I did start the show by explaining to those that may have seen me earlier today at a grocery store. I was not shoplifting, but it did look like it. So I used the platform from time to time to, help myself with my own insecurities. I'm not a thief. I'm not a shoplifter, but it did probably look like that. And I want to use the reach that I have here to make sure people, are aware of that. So I went to the grocery store just to get one item, and it wasn't my wife's fault. I'm not blaming her, but I knew, hey, there's probably going to be something else she needs. Hey, just tell me what to get. I'll get it. But I'm too stubborn to get a cart. I feel like I can carry everything. And I went to get one item, had 8 items, seemingly, that I was trying to handle with no cart or anything. So I wanted to get Monster energy drinks, and there was no way I was going to be able to hold them. So I just started shoving them in my hoodie pocket and my jacket pocket. And then sure enough, I go up to do the self-checkout, not even thinking about it. And then as I was leaving, they stopped me, and I realized, like they saw somebody just shoveling product into whatever pocket they could find. Probably thought I shoved something down my pants too. And, they asked, and I explained, and, I think they believed me. Clearly they let me go. They didn't do any kind of a strip search or anything like that. But have you ever been accused of shoplifting, John?
No, I normally don't stuff things in my pockets.
Yeah, that's true.
You're too pure. You wouldn't actually steal.
No, I wouldn't. But you just don't look like a thief. Maybe I do. I don't know. I've had some weird over the years. I've had some weird situations when it comes to, I guess, shoplifting. I mean, I've never done it.
You're a big hoodie, put the hood over your head kind of guy, though. So maybe that's part of why you look suspicious.
I mean, in 2016, I remember we were in Panama City, and it was when I just got hired at iHeart, and I only had like 3 days vacation. So my daughter was like 3 months old, and my wife and I drove down for it was not a good trip. It rained. We weren't there very long, and driving with the newborn was scary. But they ended up taking a nap, and I went to Walmart in Panama City to get I think she wanted me to get her a bottle of wine, and I got her a bottle of wine, and I think I'd left my toothbrush at home. So I got a toothbrush and maybe one other item. When I was leaving, though, they stopped me, and, they accused me of being someone who was in there to buy alcohol for like minors that were there in Panama City. And they thought I was the guy I guess they did find somebody who was out there clearly going in to buy alcohol for minors, and they accused me of being him. And they stopped me and didn't let me leave for like 5 minutes because they were convinced that I did that. And I started to get angry. I was a lot younger then, but I was more so scared. Like, are they really going to, I didn't do this, but they think I did. Am I going to get in trouble? And then I started to get angry, and I'm like, look, you didn't see me do anything. And then this guy who was not a cop, I guess he was loss prevention, which I think you have the authority to do some stuff that maybe another employee wouldn't be able to do, but you're not law enforcement unless I'm just, ignorant to how that works. And I was like, I'm leaving. And he was like, no, you're not. And I'm like, watch me. And then he radios somebody to come down and, I guess, confirm if I'm the person that they saw. And sure enough, he makes the long walk from the other end of all the rows where the checkouts are, the lines or the self-checkout. And he he wouldn't even look at me. He was like, no, it's not him. And I was like, yeah, I told you that from the beginning. I don't have any alcohol other than this bottle of wine. Did you think I went and bought a bottle of wine for a bunch of teenagers to share? And, he was like, oh, sorry, it happens a lot. You'd be surprised how many we cuff and stuff for buying alcohol for minors. And I remember thinking cuff and stuff, you badass loss prevention guy. You must be one real hard ass. Yeah.
So I'm curious if they thought you looked like somebody.
No, yeah,
or if
I looked like the guy. That's what they
Okay.
said, and that's what he told me. Like, you look like the guy. Or, I mean, I think he actually said you fit the profile. Which again, this is somebody who probably believes in his mind he is in fact an officer of the law, and he's not. That happened, and then the craziest story that is still wild to me is I was leaving the ACC basketball media days in Charlotte, and I was driving back from Charlotte, and I stopped in somewhere in Tennessee, and I went into this. I mean, it was an exit that had 2 different gas stations, and I ended up going in there and getting, I think, an energy drink or something like that. And the lady at the checkout, I mean, she was probably like 80 years old, and she told me that, like, she wasn't gonna let me leave because they finally got me because there's somebody in there that shoplifts, I guess, that looks like me. And I remember like laughing, like, you can't be serious. And then she pointed to this poster that like had a screenshot from the security camera of somebody stealing beer. Like, they would just walk in there and grab a case of beer and run. And it was grainy. You couldn't tell anything, but sure enough, like, from what I could see, it did look, I mean, I could see why she would think it was me. And then I explained to her, like, I'm not even from here. I don't even know where I'm at. And then what got me, what I don't know what she would have done to me, but like, she threatened to call the law. And what made her believe me was I pointed outside to the vehicle I was in at the gas pump, and it was the iHeart vehicle. Like, I think she believed that, like, I was clearly, it was the iHeart vehicle with Kentucky plates. And then she realized, okay, I guess he's not lying. So I don't know what it is. I guess I just look like a thief. But
that's too many shoplifting experiences for somebody who's never stolen anything.
The other 2 were random. Today was just me being a dumbass. Like, what do you expect somebody at a retail store or any kind of a store, when they see somebody shoveling stuff into their pockets, they're going to assume they're stealing. And I just wasn't thinking. I don't think well that often. I do have a brain. I'm not sure how often it works, but I realized after the fact that's what put me in the situation. So, anyways, I'm not a thief. Just so you guys are aware. All right. The NFL playoffs are now set for the second weekend here. The Super Wild Card Weekend. Is this called the Wild Card Weekend? I don't even know what they call it, but I do know we've got 4 games, 8 teams, and I'm looking forward to it, man. Football will be gone before you know it. I mean, not like forever, but the season will be over and we'll miss football. So I'm going to take it all in. Texans, Ravens. I'm hoping Lamar can, I mean, it's not like he's never won a playoff game. It's just, it's the narrative out there about Lamar in the postseason, which I got to be honest, I've not heard it as much lately. Like, now that they're in the postseason, you're not hearing about Lamar's inability to win in the postseason. Now, if he doesn't win against the Texans, it'll be all you hear about. But it makes me realize that, like, there's not been enough of Lamar in the playoffs to where you can claim like what happened with Dallas. Dallas is in the playoffs, not every year, but pretty often. And usually they choke, they bomb. And I don't even think that's really ever happened with Lamar in the Ravens. They did play against the Titans and lost, and that was painful. But I think that was, clearly they didn't play well, but I think it was actually the Texans that were more impressive than anything else. But I'm hoping that Lamar and the Ravens can kind of coast here. Let's be honest. Stroud's been phenomenal for the Texans, and they're one of the I think the storylines of the postseason. The fact that they drafted a rookie quarterback in the second pick, and here they are in the postseason winning playoff games, and it's mostly, well, I'm not going to say he's a part of it. I think he's a big part of it. It's not to say he's the only reason, but sometimes when you have rookie quarterbacks that have success in the playoffs, it's because they were drafted in the 3rd round or they were drafted late in the 1st round or something like that. And it's because the team was already set, right? The reason they drafted in the late 20s is because their team was already good. The Texans were awful. That's why they got the 2nd pick. And now Stroud has stepped in and they're instantly better. I shouldn't say I hate the Texans, but like, they're in the division. I don't want to see them do well, but it is a good story. And then we got the Packers and the Niners. That'll be the 2nd game on Saturday. Buccaneers and the Lions on Sunday at 3, and then it'll be the Chiefs and the Bills, which of course is the big matchup. Real quick on some other NFL things I want to get to here before we move on. Bill Belichick, of course, is not retiring, and I didn't realize how close he is to the all-time wins record. He is 14 wins away, and he to me seems like a guy that's such a lifer with football to where, I don't know if he'll ever retire. Like, he may just have to get fired somewhere and nobody will hire him. But he is interviewed for the Atlanta Falcons job, and it's another one of those tweets that's how we find out, which is, I know I talked about this yesterday. It's just so wild that employers are announcing when they interview somebody. I know there are a lot of jobs that can't relate to the average Joe job that a lot of us have, but I mean, just imagine you're interviewing for a job and the company uses their social media platform, because every company has a social media platform, at least a lot of them do, and they're just letting everybody know you interviewed. It's so unusual. But we saw it with Harbaugh yesterday interviewing for the Chargers job, and now Belichick. And there was rumors reports, I should say, that there was going to be some interest from the Commanders to hire Belichick, but it sounds like they're going to go in a different direction. I mean, he's a legend, and I don't think you would just completely act like you would never consider him. But like, is that the direction your franchise is going, is hiring a guy who clearly doesn't have a whole lot of time left? And let's be honest, post Tom Brady, they weren't good. And honestly, I don't believe that Belichick only has his accomplishments in New England specifically because Tom Brady. But those who do believe that, they've got evidence on their side, right? Because outside of Tom Brady being his quarterback, Belichick's never been a great coach. So I want him to get hired just because I want to see what it would look like. But if you are 14 wins away, you're going to need to at least coach 2 seasons, and you're going to need to be good. And I don't know if the Falcons, maybe they are the team that he could have some success with. But yeah, I was talking to my dad about it the other day. I thought he made a really good point. That's where I get all my great sports knowledge on in my takes from the old man. I'm a chip off the old block. But I think he's spot on. If you're going to hire Belichick, you would do it because maybe you feel like you've got a young coordinator, a young assistant that maybe just isn't ready to be the guy. And you let him learn from Belichick for a couple of years. Belichick becomes the all-time wins leader, and then, you elevate him. I mean, other than, because if you're going to hire a head coach, I just feel like you would want to do it based off of like a guy that you can build with. Don't have to be super young, but Belichick's not super young. He's super old. But seeing him coach another team will be odd. But then again, I'm aware that he has coached elsewhere, but it was long before I was watching NFL football. Also, I don't want to reset the entire thing here, but Baker Mayfield, in my opinion, continues to have one of the best stories of all time. That sounds like an exaggeration. Maybe it's a little bit of recency bias, but if you just consider Baker Mayfield's career as we know it, from start to where it is now, it's something you'd put in a movie. I mean, he was a walk-on at Texas Tech, became the first ever true freshman walk-on quarterback to start at a Power 5 school, did well, but then, he still wasn't the sexy pick. So what did Cliff Kingsbury do? He went to Davis Webb. Davis Webb became the starter. Baker left. So he walked on at Oklahoma. Trevor Knight just beat Nick Saban in Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. He was coming back. And I think the year before that, Katy Perry was on College Game Day talking about how hot he was, meaning Trevor Knight. So this guy's on top of the world. Just beat Bama. He's coming back. He loses his job to Baker, who walked on at Oklahoma. Impressive for sure. But just think about the confidence you have to have in yourself to say, I don't care. I'll go compete and I'll win. And he did. And then he becomes a phenomenal quarterback at Oklahoma, had a phenomenal career, Heisman Trophy winner, multiple appearances in the playoff, number 1 pick in the draft. And in Cleveland, it fell apart. And I'll be honest with you, I thought it was a mixture of both. The organization that is the Browns and also, Baker. And he ends up in Carolina and then LA, and it just looked as if this thing was, his career was over. And he gets an opportunity, doesn't get a big offer, but the Buccaneers give him a chance to come in and compete for the job. They sign him on a very low-level deal, and sure enough, he beats out Kyle Trask, which doesn't sound that impressive, but he bet on himself, took a chance, went and competed, won the job, and here he is winning playoff games in 2024, many years after, he was on top of the world. And a year ago, I mean, no joke, I saw the picture last night. Whenever the Panthers realized he wasn't the guy and they'd moved on from him and they eventually traded him to, I don't know if he got traded or if he got picked up off waivers or whatever, but he ended up going from Carolina to LA. And, even in his last days at Carolina, they had him playing mock. And I say mock because he wasn't really out there giving them, I wasn't tackling anybody, but he's a football guy. They told him, hey, can you line up as a scout team kind of defensive end pass rusher? And he would do it because, he'll do whatever they need him to do because he wants to stay in the NFL. So from going from the number 1 pick in the NFL draft at quarterback to being a guy that is just on borrowed time, playing scout defensive, when I say mock, I mean like it's probably not even full speed, but he's just giving him some kind of a look, to now winning a playoff game in Tampa. It's a good story. I know people don't like him. I get why people don't like him. He probably understands why people don't like him either. He's got a lot of confidence. He carries that with him, but it's what makes him good. To do what he's done, you have to have confidence. You have to have an insane amount of internal confidence in yourself. And I just think that's cool. I know people don't like him. There's a little bit of like I don't know if it's a rivalry, but like obviously people, think of the Heisman that he won in 2017. And I know a lot of folks around here believe Lamar should have won it. But, Baker has had a phenomenal story. His story is phenomenal at this point, and it's not over yet. So I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. I really am. Also, we haven't talked a whole lot about it yet, but we've got a loaded night of college basketball. We've got Indiana, Purdue, Mike Woodson, 3-1 against Purdue. I didn't know that until John just told me. Indiana is clearly a bubble team at best right now, I would say, but this would certainly send their season in the right direction. Kansas State, Baylor, that is Jerome Tang going up against his former boss. BYU and Iowa State is not a game that I think any of you would really care about, and I understand, but it is 2 ranked teams. Iowa State, they're off to a great start this year. They knocked off Houston last week, the only loss Houston has right now. And BYU, they've been quietly, a legitimate team this year, top 25 team. Mark Pope's done a good job. Cahill Fennell, former Louisville assistant, is on staff there. So I'm looking forward to watching some hoops tonight. And then this is just a little quick note here I wanted to add, because it's just it kind of puts in perspective what Gonzaga had been. And I guess I shouldn't act like they will never be there again. But Gonzaga's streak of 143 straight weeks in the AP poll has come to an end. It was the longest streak. They are now unranked for the first time since March 14th of 2016. That is literally, I believe, that was the first month of me doing any show here at 790. So they've been ranked essentially my entire existence here on this station. And I've had, I'm coming up on 8 years. I've had the morning show, the midday show, and now the afternoon. And I know a lot of that, a lot of people think they're ranked because they have a gaudy record and they play in a weak conference. But either way, they also had a streak that I believe has since come to an end that was more impressive than that would really, I think, because I never thought Gonzaga was worthy of getting the seeds that they would get at times, just because it's just impossible to know if they are truly worthy of that when they play in that league. But they had the longest streak for a while of making the second weekend. And some would say, well, it's because they got the easy seeds. Fair enough. But like they've avoided like being exposed for years when they play, an 8 seed or a 5 seed or whatever it may be. But they're not very good this year. They're now unranked. And now, John, trivia time for the company, man. You ready?
Give it to me.
Who has the longest active streak of being ranked? It's 75 weeks.
Duke.
Nope.
Kentucky?
Nope. It is
UConn.
Nope. You're guessing the right tier, but consider this. Let me give you a hint. It's a team that has consistently been very, very highly ranked in recent years, but they also have traditionally not played in a great league. Any guesses?
So is it Cincinnati?
Hell no.
I was thinking the American Athletic Conference.
You're in the right conference, but they're not in that conference anymore.
I don't know then.
Houston.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I wouldn't have got it either. I
should have thought Houston.
I wouldn't have, because Houston's, Houston's
we're fully aware that Kelvin Sampson's had Houston rolling for a while now.
No doubt. But and I think we'll probably be a little bit more mindful of their run that they've been on under Kelvin Sampson now that they're going to be more, they're in the Big 12, so they're going to be on TV more. They're going to play more meaningful games. They may struggle, but I don't see them slowing down. But no, Houston to me has turned into the team where when you think of contenders, really good teams, like teams are legit, they never come to mind for a lot of people, including myself. But when you reference like the rankings and you see them there, you're like, oh yeah, they're really good, but I forgot about them. That's the way I see them, because I'm sure there's some people that doubt Houston, but I don't. I think, I don't know if they're going to win the national championship, and I think they do have I think they may have the worst loss in the history of the Final Four when they played Baylor. They lost by like 1 million points. But Kelvin Sampson did a great job, and he continues to be a guy that, like, if there was ever any movement about him leaving Houston and being interested in Louisville when the job opens up, I'd love it, but he just doesn't come to mind, and it's probably just for good reason, right? If he was truly looking to leave Houston and he wanted to potentially go to a place like Louisville, I feel like he'd be out there because people would know. But he's a really good coach, and I feel like he's turned into, to me, Kelvin Sampson's turned into the coach that when you think about the best coaches in the game and you're just reeling them off, he doesn't come to mind. But when you bring him up, you realize, yeah, he's pretty damn good. You know who was that before him? Jim Beeline. Is that his name? Beeline? John Beeline?
John Beeline.
I say Jim all the time. I get Beeline, Boeheim. Yeah, Beeline. I mean, at Michigan, I mean, he was phenomenal. I mean, he was the one guy that like didn't get mentioned with the elites, but like has had a hell of a career at West Virginia, did great things at Michigan. And you got to wonder if he regrets going to the NBA. It never seemed like a fit at all. Did he go to the Pistons or did he go to the Cavs?
I think it was the Pistons.
Yeah, either way, if he was still there, I mean, I think they'd still be one of the premier programs in the country. I mean, they were that when he was there. So, all right, we got to run. We'll come back on the other side, get to your texts. And if you want to give us a call, you can, 502-571-7900. And we'll take another look here at this list from Jeff Goodman. He ranks the 20 worst college basketball coaching hires since 2000. And Kenny Payne came in at number 1, which is not what you want. But if you really consider the overall experience that has been the Kenny Payne era, it should not come as a surprise. But there's one coach that made it twice, meaning he was hired on 2 different occasions, and it's still both hires were looked at as like terrible. So we'll do that, and who knows what else we'll get into in these next 30 minutes or so. Stick with us. Coffee and Company, fueled by Thornton's here on Sports Talk 790.
Sports Talk 790, the best cats and cards coverage. You're listening to Coffee and Company with Nick Coffey on Sports Talk 790.
All right, we got about 30 minutes left here on a Tuesday edition of Coffee and Company, fueled by Thornton's. Don't forget, if you've missed anything on the show, you can always go back and listen to the podcast, and you can always go back and now watch the show if you would like, because we're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, or I guess X if you have moved into the new world where they call it X. But I don't know why. I don't know why we had issues earlier with the stream, but I think we're good to go. Hopefully I didn't just jinx it. But yeah. Anyways, one thing I want to add real quickly that was from the 3 o'clock hour for those just now joining us is the Louisville representation in the playoffs. And what I mean by that is not that they've got, the most players left when it comes to, former schools having representation in the NFL, but a good chunk of these guys that are still playing in the NFL, that are playing for teams that are playing in the playoffs right now, are high impact guys. I mean, John Grenard and Sheldon Rankins, and we can claim Grenard, by the way. Somebody on the text line was acting like we could. Jonathan Grenard, I mean, he to me he embraces both places he played. He was at Louisville for a long time, and then he transferred to Florida and had a good last year there, and he's a good player for the Texans. In fact, a really good player. And then Sheldon Rankins has been a good player in the NFL for a while. Got drafted by the Saints, and he's been a huge part of the Texans' success this year. You look at Jair, I mean, clearly one of the best defensive backs in the NFL, had a big interception in that game against the Cowboys. Yaya Diaby, one of the better rookies in the NFL this year on the defensive side. And then, of course, the MVP, Lamar Jackson. So, I don't know for sure how much that helps you when it comes to recruiting. I'm sure it does to an extent, but I don't know how much. But one thing we know is that it doesn't hurt you, right? When you've got representation at this level, I mean, it's something you can't buy. You know what I mean? I mean, Lamar Jackson now becoming the youngest, and it hadn't happened officially yet, but he's about to be the youngest the youngest NFL quarterback MVP to win it multiple times. He just turned 27 last week. So the youngest to ever win it twice was Jim Brown way back in the day. But again, quarterback, Lamar will have 2 of them when it's official, and he will have done it really before he turned 27. He turned 27 last week, but he played his last game this year meaning when he played and earned it at the age of 26. So, it's nice to see that. We've had a real lack of NFL presence in the last year or two. And honestly, I think a lot of it due to the era that was Scott Satterfield. But I think you have guys this year like Quincy Riley and Ashton Gelati specifically that turned down the NFL, and they would have been, I think, 3rd, 4th round guys, maybe even higher. And I think they'll be NFL guys next year, which is, of course, what you want, right? The more NFL players you put in the league, the better likelihood you have of getting NFL talent that's coming out of high school, meaning, guys that can develop to be that. All right, let's revisit this list here that we talked about earlier. I mean, it is a list, but I guess it's more so rankings. And it's got a lot of attention locally for good reason, because it does feature Louisville and Kenny Payne. So Jeff Goodman, a college basketball insider reporter, he is now writing for the messenger.com, and the majority of his work that you see is on the Field of 68 on their digital platform. But he ranked the 20 worst coaching hires in college basketball since 2000. And when I saw the headline, I thought to myself, Kenny Payne, he's either towards the very top or he's not on there at all. And I thought that because he's still coaching. Like, I don't think there are many. I mean, I'm looking here, just scrolling through the rankings. I don't think, and John, you've seen it too, I don't think there's any coaches that are currently coaching at the school that they, were at the time when they were, of course, a terrible hire. The one coach, I mean, Billy Gillespie's still coaching, but not at the places that hired him. So Kenny Payne's number 1, and I'll read for you what Jeff wrote in his write-up about why Kenny's number 1. And again, this is from Jeff Goodman. It says, Payne seemed like the perfect choice, and he had complete support to take over the program as a former Louisville star who played in the NBA and then worked as a longtime college assistant. Prior to taking over the Cardinals, Payne had been working as an assistant coach with the New York Knicks. In March of 2022, he replaced Chris Mack in Louisville, and he's been beyond miserable. The Cardinals won only 4 games in the first season, and they are 6-10 this season with back-to-back losses at DePaul and at home against Arkansas State. It's almost unfathomable how low Payne has taken this once-storied program that has won 3 national titles. So look, that's a bummer to see, but it makes total sense. I can't really disagree with it. Louisville right now, again, they're playing better basketball, and that's at least better to watch as a fan. I don't think it changes the way people view Kenny as a coach and the overall era that has been the Kenny Payne era that has been, again, unbelievably bad. But, it makes total sense. I mean, he won 4 games last year, and people can claim that may not have been, anything to do with him. In fact, I know that's not true, and I don't know how many people believe that. But either way, he won 4 games, and then he started this year with, if you really want to get into the specifics of each schedule, last year they played in Maui. Last year they played teams that are name-wise similar, but not like, for example, last year when they played Wright State, they were legitimately a good mid-major. App State, a good mid-major. And then they played 3 top 50 teams in Maui. Then they played Maryland in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Then they played Miami. So, and then they lost to Lipscomb. So, these are, by the way, Bellarmine, Wright State, App State, those are all teams they lost to. You throw Lipscomb in there. So, that's awful to lose that many. They started, 0-9? But this year, they clearly had wins early on that they didn't have. But they were barely beating these teams, and these teams are way worse. Like when you hear, I think the average college basketball fan hears Wright State and they hear Coppin State, and they may not know there's a difference. There's a massive difference. So with the schedule, before they started playing better, really, I guess before the Miami game, it was not a hot take or an exaggeration or being a hater, as some people call it, to say that they were worse. Like their results, their resume. You can say that, hey, they're getting better. If you can't see they're getting better, then you're a hater. And that's fine. But let's be honest, like they're playing really bad teams, and for the most part, they were still losing. So before they started playing better and beat Miami, and then NC State, even the Pittsburgh game, I think at times was more competitive than you would have thought. You were in the midst of potentially being just as bad or maybe worse than a year ago. So we know Louisville is playing better basketball. If you're watching, the Miami game was easily their best win of the 10 that they have with Kenny. NC State, it was fun to see them compete, and I was enjoying it from a fan standpoint because, again, they still lost. I don't think they're good, but, man, that's a lot better as a fan than watching them get killed by Pittsburgh, Virginia, Kentucky, Arkansas State, DePaul, Virginia Tech. So that was, we know that's happened, but overall, objectively, people aren't looking at the Louisville Kenny Payne situation any differently based off that because it's just too far gone. So, I said it during the offseason, and I remember where I was when I said it because it was one of those things that, and this isn't like, hey, I told you so, because it's not even like I'm giving you some like big opinion, but whenever I was trying to internally in real time on the air change my psyche, right? Because everybody claims I'm a hater. I'm a realist. I can't believe that Louisville's going to be better when I haven't seen anything to show me that. You can just have blind faith that, hey, last year, forget about it. That was everybody else's fault. Kenny's got his guys now. They're going to be great. I can't do that. If I would, I could, because that would be a better mental place to be in for the entire offseason than just worrying, oh, wow, we brought Kenny Payne back, and I'm not sure it's going to be much better. And sure enough, that's where we are right now. But I remember we were at Churchill Downs doing the show in the media box there during Derby week. And I thought to myself aloud on the show, this is either going to be a breakthrough year for Kenny, where with this influx of young talent and new pieces, they're going to take a big jump and be a competitive team that might have a chance to make the tournament. Or we're going to continue to see things play out the way we watched in year one, regardless of personnel, regardless of anything, the way he coaches, his inability to lead. They don't have any defensive principles. They don't run any real offense. Like, And all the other things too. I mean, there's off the court things that are another sign that this guy's in over his head. So I said he's either going to be one of two things. He's going to break through, and they're going to have a tournament caliber team, and we're going to feel like, okay, year one sucked, but man, hey, at least this is heading in a direction that you can see light at the end of the tunnel. Or he'll be really bad again, and we'll look at this as potentially the worst hire in college basketball history. And that sounds like such hyperbole. Sounds like such an exaggeration, but it's not. And this list from Jeff Goodman may not prove anything to you, and it shouldn't. It's one person with an opinion, but this is an objective person that probably knows more about college basketball hires and how they work than anybody. And that's not to kiss Jeff's ass. It's just the truth. He is probably as connected as anybody when it comes to college basketball. And he's been pretty, I don't think he goes out of his way, but when Louisville comes up on their show, Field of 68, I mean, he kind of is like me at times and fans at times, because you don't really know what to say other than what he wrote, which is it's unfathomable how miserable this has been under Kenny Payne. So to see that, and then to see Louisville open up as a 22-point dog against Carolina, it's just a reminder that despite them playing better, and they deserve credit for playing better, meaning like the players, and even Kenny, you can give Kenny credit too if you want. I don't know what he's going to do with it, but hey, they're at least not as miserable as they were. But Louisville basketball is so far from what it should be, to where I don't believe there's any scenario that could play out the rest of the way that would have fans thinking, all right, let's keep doing this. This is eventually going to work out. This is eventually going to be the guy that can get us to competing for Final Fours, because that's what Louisville basketball is. And that's why I continue to say there's really two different conversations to have. One is, hey, I'm going to watch him because I can't not watch him. It's what I do. I'm a diehard fan. I've got a lot of emotional investment in this program as a fan. I can't not watch him. So knowing that they're at least more watchable now and they're fighting hard, Mike James is playing his ass off. The young guys are showing a lot of upside. That is a better experience as a fan. And I'll take that every day over what we've gone through for the majority of this era that is the Kenny Payne era. But the other conversation is still very much, it's really not a conversation. It's just the situation. They're going to need a new coach at the end of this year. Now, will they do that? That's up to Josh Hurd. And I don't even really think there's I'm sure you could find the conversation if you look hard enough, but I don't hear anybody out there acting like, should Louisville make a change? Maybe there's some people, but like for the most part, everybody realizes like you got to make a move or you'll continue to fall flat. And as I've said, and this sounds like an exaggeration, but I mean it. If Louisville ends up with the record that they're projected to have right now in the KenPom, which currently they are projected to finish this season 9-22 overall, 4-16 in the ACC. If that is what happens, or anything close to that, let's just say they go anywhere from 9 wins to 13 wins. If that's the situation, and U of L decides to just keep this going and they don't make a change, that will be a full-on confirmation that the university does not value the program like they used to. Because there'd be no scenario other than you just like for sympathy, maybe like, hey, maybe he'll work out. He played here. Because the reality is this: if you open the job, you'll have legit interest from really good coaches that could come in and instantly make you a lot better. Doesn't mean you're going to go to Final Four. Doesn't mean you're going to be nationally relevant overnight, but that can happen. So, I needed to see this list today. I needed to see -21 because I felt myself not thinking Kenny should be the guy long term, but when you've been so miserable and then you see this team actually playing better basketball, and you can see there is some young talent there, and Mike James, again, playing as good as anybody in the last 3 games, it helps me keep it in perspective. Again, 2 different conversations. I'm going to watch them and hope they keep playing the way they did the last couple of games because that's a better experience as a fan. But overall, we know there's going to need to be a change made at the end of the year. I think the conversation's not about should there be a change. It's about who's it going to be. But as I've said a million times, it comes down to one person making that decision, I believe, and that's Josh Hurd. And I'm going to assume he will make the decision and move on from Kenny, but only time will tell, I guess. All right, quick break. We'll come back on the other side, our final segment here on a Tuesday afternoon. Coffee and Company, fueled by Thornton's on Sports Talk 790.
Show with Shannon the Dude and Billy Rutledge. Tomorrow morning at 9 on Sports Talk 790.
Very well.
You're listening to Coffee and Company with Nick Coffey on Sports Talk 790.
All right, so again, some college basketball games real quickly here to hit on. John, you mentioned NC State, Wake Forest. Did you say you're going NC State minus 1.5?
I have it minus 2.5.
Okay, it's 1.5 now. Man, this is an example of why they're good at what, because that's the perfect line that makes it tough to pick. I may do the over a 149.5 because I think both teams can score, but it's also a perfect line to where like I could see it being, right around there, which again is why they're good at what they do. Indiana plus 9.5 is tempting to me. I know you're not going to bet on it. You don't need to. You're a Hoosier fan, but that's a lot of points at home in a rivalry game where Indiana is much better at home, and their coach has proven. I mean, these guys are going to hit the floor knowing that despite Purdue being the premier team right now in college basketball in the eyes of some, they can beat them. I mean, they may not do it, but like they're not going to enter this game feeling like they don't have the ability to beat them. They can do it, and they've done it when they weren't as good. So one game that I want to throw out there that I'm with Pitino not playing tonight because of Pitino's not playing or coaching, by the way, because of COVID. I like Seton Hall plus 1.5 at home. Any others for you?
Oh, I've got Kansas minus 5.5 against Oklahoma State on the road tonight. I like that pick.
Yeah, BYU and Iowa State. I'm going to go BYU money line. Not a lot of value there. They are favored by 4.5, but I'm just going to probably sprinkle something light on that because I think they're going to be. I think they're good. They're at home, and Iowa State I think is going to be. I mean, Iowa State. They should be up for this game because it's a BYU team that's in the top 20, but it's a new team. It still doesn't feel like a team that you get juiced to play for. And I think they're due for a letdown after knocking off Houston last week. All right, real quickly here, let me talk to you guys about my friends at the Louisville Men's Clinic. You've heard about them for a long time because they've been helping gentlemen in this city, this area, Kentuckiana, for a long time, helping them with erectile dysfunction, Peyronie's disease, testosterone levels not being where they need to be. And again, you hear it often on this station with commercials. You probably hear it through word of mouth because they're great at what they do. But I'll tell you about my experience. I'm somebody that did not know why I seemed to have lost my edge. I don't know why I wasn't getting the same results from the work I was putting in when it comes to the gym and what I eat. Not that I feel like I should be looking like a bodybuilder, but I'm mindful of what I put in my body. I work out not to get big, but just to stay healthy, and honestly, just because of my mental health. But yet I felt myself just not looking like I work out at all, and putting in work and seemingly getting in worse shape as far as the appearance, and low energy, lethargic at times, brain fog. And I said, you know what? Maybe this is me getting old. But after a while, I said, this doesn't make sense. Let me go see what's going on. I reached out to the Louisville Men's Clinic, went to see Dr. Wood. And yes, his name is Dr. Wood, and he works at the Louisville Men's Clinic. Very funny, everybody. But yeah, he's great, by the way. If you go see Dr. Wood and you don't even take them up on their services, but you just have a conversation with Dr. Wood, you will feel like you won because he is a very, very intelligent, entertaining guy. Love Dr. Wood. But anyways, I had my levels checked for testosterone, not knowing if there'd be anything that was out of the norm. And then through our conversation, I realized people of my age, that I'm not young, but I'm not old. But in the 30s, which is where I'm at, 35, it's when you start to hit a decline. My levels may have actually declined long ago because my levels were nowhere near where they should be for somebody my age. So sure enough, they helped me out. I'm now getting testosterone treatment at Louisville Men's Clinic, and it's absolutely changed my energy, my mood. And I'm doing the same things I was doing before, but now that I've got testosterone levels where they should be for my age, I feel like my metabolism's working better. I mean, I'm losing weight without really doing anything different than what I've been doing the last few months. So go check them out. LouisvilleMen'sClinic.com. Give them a call, 502-444-4000. Again, 502-444-4000. Real quick here, Billy Gillespie made it twice in this list we were discussing, both at Kentucky and also at Texas Tech. And then did you see Tom Crean made it?
I did. 20th place for the Georgia hire.
We don't have time to get into it, but I would love to know, are you basing these, Jeff, off of how it worked out or the decision to do so? Because the decision to hire Tom Crean at Georgia was not a bad one. In fact, I think it was a good one, but it did, in fact, completely fail. All right, we're out of time. Everybody enjoy their evening, and for the sake of the company man, John Alden, let's go Hoosiers, all right?
Let's do it.
Let's go Hoosiers.